I was just listening to our illustrious leader Boris Johnson earlier, and I thought rather than wasting my time listening to that twerp for any longer, I thought I'd get on a leader that I'd actually follow. If he was in charge of the country, Mel. So it is a pleasure to have you on. Actually,
Thank you.
When we started this, we kind of wrote down some names of people that we'd like to have on at some point. And I'm pretty sure I had you up as one of the first names, Mel.
Is that because when you asked me who I wanted to recruit, I said no dickheads?
Yeah, it's that line. I remember that line. I use it all the time. I used it on my dad. I used it on my dad the other day. It was like, it just applies to any line, any kind of anything you're kind of referring to. Just no idiots, basically. That's just a basic rule of life. And has that stood you well, that principle?
Yeah, it really has actually. I think no idiots is better because I think obviously we try and wrestle with gender equality at KG. So it's it is a bit sexist, but it has stood us really, really well actually. It's interesting because I think a lot of people think that you have to kind of to have that fire in your belly. It's like, oh, they're a bit of a dickhead, but they're they're really focused and ambitious and driven. Like, but you can't have one without another. But you take, I mean, this. This is what you spend your days doing. It's you absolutely can have one without the other.
Yeah, we were just having a conversation about this a moment ago, because it is something that you come up against frequently. That there can be a separation between determination and just outright aggression, and sometimes when someone's having a tantrum or that rage, or just that sort of behaviour, it puts a wall up for them to communicate outwardly and to receive information inwardly as well. So it's really difficult to work with people like that, even though it's just, aside from being unpleasant, it's actually just a technical challenge to be able to communicate with someone who is a dickhead.
You're right, because they don't listen. They're not listening to the conversation. They're just trying to get their own perspective and point of view across.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It's amazing the number of people who, so when they've been in the business a year, do their sort of first annual review and say, and turn around and say, it's the first place I've ever worked where I can genuinely say, I like everybody there. And or there's it might be that you're ambivalent about a few people, but it's kind of like there's no one that you're actively disliking, and people who've been working in our industry for 20 years turn around and say, this is the first time it's happened to me, which is kind of bizarre. But actually, having also worked in our industry for over 20 years, and Brad, you spend your days talking to people in our industry, it's like there's quite a few of them out there.
If you've not listened to us yet, Mel, that's absolutely fine. The whole purpose of why we set this up back in March time was, in essence, to keep us as an industry connected. That was kind of the purpose of it. I found industrial design in the last 6 years I've been doing it to be quite an insular place. Everyone knows everyone, but they don't really talk to each other. It's an odd kind of world.
Design as a whole, people just aren't direct, and they're not honest or truthful. And I think that's been really highlighted, not in a kind of massively deceitful way, but just people don't share. And I think COVID's really highlighted that. People have gone to one extreme or another. I mean, it's been a really difficult time for businesses, and a lot of businesses like, no, we're fine, everything's brilliant, and then suddenly you're speaking to the likes of you, Brad, and you'll find out 50% of their team's gone, and it's kind of like, well, actually, why can't you just be a bit more open? No one's going to. It's not as a result of anything you've done. It's what's happening in the world.
Yeah, I saw competitors of mine putting posts up saying it's business as usual, and I was like, well, it's not. And I just messaged them directly and said, look, you can't be putting messages out like this. You just got to be honest with people.
Yeah.
It's not fine. People are being made redundant, and through no fault of their own. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, really. But I think hopefully it's in a slightly better place than what it was back in
I think we're
back
seeing
in
some
April time.
of the last quarter of the year picking up, which is good.
Mm.
You know, so I think you know, and I suppose we're fortunate enough to be of, you know, a size with a wide client base that you know, we can kind of weather the storm. But
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I mean, I sit on the board of the DBA, and it's interesting, you know, speaking to the CEO there, and she's saying that, you know, she's seeing agencies across a wide spectrum in terms of how they're acting, you know, and you can understand maybe digital is booming as a result of this, just because of increased demand, but you know, it's yeah, it's, I mean, most of our work is healthcare, which is fairly recession proof, you know, in fact the vast majority, but you know, it's people are still slowing down decision making processes.
Yeah, COVID still creates challenges on access to key people, right? Even if it is healthcare, you still need the person to sign something off, and you know, you need access to, you know, think of what's happening right now with cancer patients, and no one's getting screenings and things like that. You know, it's yeah, I imagine it is pretty recession proof, but it's multi-layered, isn't it, in terms of what's
it is. And you know, and even, you know, if you take that for example, you might find, you know, obviously interest in ventilators may have increased, but you know, if you're making surgical equipment, that your order book's lower. So you know, it's not a sort of broad brush anyway. It's
yeah, I've done a really poor job of actually introducing you, Mel. So yeah, I've just kind of started chatting really. I'm also really bad at ending these things.
Okay, well, I'll say I've got a call at 7.
Yeah, so just cut me off at 7:15. Basically. Yeah, just leave, and I'll just say, and that was our chat with Mel. So who is Merle Hall, and who are Kinneir Dufort? To anyone that doesn't know who you guys are, I think everyone will, but just in case there's that one person that, like, who's Kinneir Dufort?
So, well, I'll start with Katie.
Yeah.
That's more interesting. Katie is 43 years old this year. We were founded in 77.
Wow.
As initially quite a sort of, with just a sort of narrower product design consultancy. Now we are much broader than that in terms of what we do and how we do it. So we describe ourselves as a user-centered innovation and product development partner. So our teams really encompass all of the areas that you need, from ideation through to getting something into market, in terms of, you know, whether that's going through regulatory processes or whatever that looks like. As I said, most of what we do is in healthcare. So we have sort of a combination of, the way we describe it is, of creative, technical and user experience focused teams. So that could be innovation experts, it could be human factors, it could be electronics and software engineers, industrial designers, and you know, right through to sort of prototyping, and sometimes even when it's low volume, high value products, we do small manufacturing runs. So so it is a bit of a one-stop shop, really. Lays us a bit, so makes us sound a bit horses, but no, it's you know, there's a legacy attached to it, and I'm very much the caretaker of that at the moment. So,
yeah, because I'm presuming that there was once a chap called Kinneir and once a chap called Dufort, but yeah.
And Ross, who's Mr. Kinneir, is still very much sort of omnipresent. He so in fact he messaged me yesterday saying that he was drinking the beer that he'd put in his fridge for me, so I needed to get up and see him. He still lives in Bristol. And Francis, Mr. Dufort, actually left in 1985. Ross left in 2002. So I've actually done longer in the business than Francis. He lives on. So he went and he set up a manufacturing facility down in Devon. But as I say, Ross left in 2002, did a management buyout. Ross's dad was Jock Kinneir, who worked with Margaret Calvert on all of the road signage, and sort of the transport font, which is now so iconic, and you know, and it was recently the 50th anniversary. And when Jock closed his sort of doors and retired, you know, he kind of rolled down the shutters, and that was it for the business. So Ross was really keen that that wasn't going to be the case with Kinneir Dufort. So he did an MBO in 2002, and then we did a second MBO in 2016. So we're now in our sort of third iteration of KD.
Yeah. The legacy lives on.
It does, yeah, it does. And I've been there 11 years now. I was saying to someone just the other day, I think if somebody had told me that I'd be running the business when I joined 11 years ago, I would have bet my house on the fact that that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But just goes to show you, doesn't it?
What was your job when you first started? Was you in account management or?
Yeah, kind of. So my background was more sort of strategy and innovation, and I did 10 years in graphic design and sort of branding, basically, and then we've done quite a few projects with KD in various iterations and businesses I'd worked in where sort of brought together 2 and 3D. And so I knew of KD and KD knew of me, and then they approached me and sort of said, actually I just had my son, so that would have been 11 years ago, and they sort of approached me and said, you know, come and join us and we'll be super flexible in terms of how many days you want to do, what role you want to do, you know, whatever you want to do. It's
amazing for the time, 11 years ago.
Yeah, well, they wanted to, because my experience was more in sort of consumer and FMCG healthcare, and they wanted to really build that side of the business. So, so it fitted well together, and so the sort of consultancy agency I was at, my boss, who was a woman, was being pretty awkward about showing sort of the level of flexibility, well, any flexibility. So that kind of suited me at the time. So I joined 6 months later, and actually my role was kind of I was sort of just doing a bit of sort of a bit of strategic sort of accounts development, things like that, marketing, all sorts. And then 6 months later I was pregnant again, which went down like a lead balloon. I do remember having to wait until there was more than one director in the room together to tell them, because I was a bit worried about how they were going to react, which I'm sure lots of people probably still deal with that now. And then so I took another 6 months off and then went back, and then gradually my role got bigger. I did more days, sort of ended up working full time, and sort of really sort of involved in every part of the business, sort of as my role grew. And then I kind of got to the point where I was ready to go, and I said to the then directors, right, you know, I want to go and do something on my own. And at that time they were sort of looking for, you know, starting to think about what their exit would look like. So they said, well, do you want to buy the business from us? I said, okay, let's do that then.
And here we are.
One of the 5 stayed with me. The others all ran away. And then
was Craig there at the time?
Yeah,
or?
That's Craig. Yeah. So my partner in crime, Mr. Whiteman. So yeah, we did that in 2016. And then sort of, you know, and sort of brought in a new members of the team. We were kind of we sort of restructured the infrastructure of the business, so not in terms of the people, but in terms of new systems, processes, new ways of doing things. That's when we sort of defined our purpose and how we wanted the business to be. And I think it goes back to the no dickheads, really, because I'd spent probably the last 15 years making lists in other agencies and consultancies of how I didn't want to do things. So that was quite a long list by that stage. So,
when did the strapline? Because a shameless plug here, Mel. I was listening to KD Conversations earlier, so it's a shameless plug for you there. When did the strapline Design a Better World come in? When did that? 2016, yeah.
Yeah. So I suggested it, and sort of, and then Craig said, it sounds a bit Miss World to me. And I was like, just live with it for a little bit, and then he did, and because it really defined for us why we were doing this.
It's incredibly fitting for now, isn't it? If you think about what's going on.
Yeah, it really is. And at the time, I don't think many people got it, because purpose is a big subject now, but 4 years ago, not so much. But it really was a case of saying, and it's not just about the line itself, designingabetter-world.com, that will teach the Kinneir Dufort website.
There's a shameless plug. Yeah.
I mean, that demonstrates now, if you tried to kind of buy designingabetter-world.com, it would probably cost you a few million quid now. But, I could sell it to someone good stuff. But I think it was about how everything we wanted to do. So it wasn't just about, it was about the work that we were doing and designing, for better outcomes for the people we were designing for and the businesses we were working with. But it was also around how we wanted to be as a business and the behaviours that we wanted to instill in that business. And sort of going back to the conversation we were having earlier around, sometimes those can be a bit questionable, and not just in design, in any industry. I'm sure there are ones a lot worse than ours. So it came through, and we defined our values at the same time, and sort of, really developed a zero tolerance, because I really believe that, the culture of a business is defined by what the management will tolerate in that business and what they won't. Because if people see you doing something, doesn't matter what you've got written on the wall, if you're being an absolute arsehole, you can't expect other people not to be. So we talked about, there was a number of sort of behaviours that we developed alongside our values, things like act honourably even when no one's looking, which is quite a hard thing to do, actually, because not many people do that. I think a lot maybe try, and it's hard, but
it's that bit, isn't it? Even when nobody's looking, it's that you either have that and own it and possess it and feel the value of it yourself, or you conduct yourself in a professional way when you're at work. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but there's that deeper level of, as you talked about earlier, about honesty of communication, about sort of being a bit more deeply truthful.
It's hard, it's hard because, things don't always pan out. And as I say, if other people aren't playing by the same rules, then it puts you at a disadvantage. But it's just basic karma, isn't it? It's really not rocket science, this stuff. It's like, just treat other people as you would want to be treated yourself. And it again, sort of our values, our key value that we talk about is respect. And it's not about being respectful. So it's not about kowtowing to clients or people, or managers or in the business, If there's like where our office is, there's some student accommodation nearby. So you're just as likely to see me out there cleaning up piles of sick as you are the housekeeper from the students. Actually, less so now. We put a golden.
Give it time, Mel. Give it time. I'm sure they'll be back out there.
Yeah,
so, did you get much resistance from a strapline like that? Or is it a case of now you're 4 years later, it's like everyone's just embedded it into that kind of vision?
I don't think people necessarily got why we were telling them it was important to us, and I get that, because it's important to us. So it's not necessarily, but actually a lot of clients related to it. I think particularly clients in our medical sector, because I think a lot of them felt similar sort of feelings about what was important and why they were choosing to do what they were doing. But I think some clients definitely kind of were like, well, why are you talking about this? It's not
just do the work. We want it in silver.
Fabulous stuff, and just give you on to your computer. But no, I think a lot of them did understand it, and I think now it's just a hygiene factor now, really, isn't it? Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, it's that classic. I mentioned his name in the last episode, Simon Sinek, and Drew kind of looked at me and was like, it's that classic case of you've watched a TED talk and you're just going to put it in every single conversation you've ever had.
Right,
So I'm in that kind of mode at the minute still. In terms of keeping on this topic of designing better work, did it change your relationship with your clients? Did you find it kind of went less transactional and more kind of meaningful? Did more business come off the back of it? Because why I ask is that I feel like Kinneir Dufort is one of the very few agencies that has a purpose. The amount of times I'll ask an agency, why should someone work for you? And they'll say, oh, we're in London. And it's like, well, you know, but when you talk about why should you work for Kinneir Dufort, there's a very clear reason why you should work for Kinneir Dufort, and it's very much a case of people are interested in that because it has purpose.
Yeah.
Whereas,
sorry, I was just going to say, I think we're quite different to a lot of other agencies, not just in terms of our purpose, but you know, I guess that comes through in some of the other values as well. So we talk about openness, so we share everything with our team, all our financials. We have a thing called open board. So any member of the team can come into the board meeting and ask me an embarrassing question in front of the chair if that's what they want to do. You know, anyone can walk in and ask anything they want. We don't veto anything. So we're quite open. We're pioneering in terms of the work that we do. So a lot of it's quite cutting edge. So so it's interesting and it's varied. So that's great for members of the team as well. We talk about curiosity. So we do quite a lot of sort of interesting things ourselves as well. We're not very good at always talking about it, but we do some interesting work for ourselves. And then you know, we talk about sort of being smart as well, and that's not necessarily just look at us. We're so clever. We don't mean it like that. We mean it in the sense of, you know, smart in terms of work-life balance. So we were already, before this, working in sort of flexible working and you know, and in terms of sort of the way we run the business with the processes and sort of the way we share data and across the team, and you know, and sort of try and you know, to the best of our ability, invest in people and develop people. So we you know, that's what we consider to be smart about the way we work. In terms of our clients, I think we get a lot of feedback because we ask our clients a lot. So we get a lot of feedback saying they really like us, probably going back to decades, isn't it? So a lot of them respect what we're trying to do, and you know, and I think a lot of people do work that they're not very proud of, but they just don't talk about it. You know, there's a lot of things and things, you know, bits and bobs going on, which you know, but ultimately, I'm really not going to get judgy about that, because people have choice. You know, we have the choice not to do that because of the size we are. Whereas if you're starting out, it might be an entirely different scenario. You've just got to do what you've got to do. But I think that is liked by clients as well, and we try and do more with less clients.
Okay.
So we will invest more in the relationships with the clients. So in terms of you know, really sort of trying to partner with those clients and understand what it is they need and what their business challenges are and how we can support that and be a bit more proactive from that. So you can't do that if you've got shed loads of clients. So so you know, we try and sort of reduce the number we work with and have more meaningful relationships.
There must be quite a difference between some of the clients and how they respond to that. I mean, even just, well, with the view of wanting to keep things narrow and have more of an engagement with them. I'm sure there are some clients or some companies that are like, that's what they need, and they've been looking for that. And then there are others that think, well, hang on, no, I've got this budget approved and I can't commit to any more than that. I just need this piece of work doing. How does that play out?
Yeah, I think there's always value that you can add to the relationship, and it doesn't actually, you know, I mean, we work with massive businesses, but we also work with really interesting startups and a lot of universities as well. And, you know, and it's just different types of value that you bring, you know, because a corporate environment is very different to a spin out from a university. So in, you know, in that later example, you may be supporting more from a commercial perspective or helping them in terms of understanding what the actual development process looks like. You know, because if you're from an academic background, you may not know that. You may do, but you may not. And you may not have the support that you need. So it's really just about being really flexible and with, you know, it's an overused word. I was going to say agile, but you know, we can be quite fast in getting because we've done it for a long time, and we know what works and what doesn't. So and actually, you know, often that can be more cost effective if, you know, if we're working to smaller budgets, etc. So it's you know, I mean, we were just talking to a business last week. It was an interesting sort of femtech business. They've got like no money. They're waiting to see about an Innovate UK grant. We're like half of the other clients out there in the world, but you know, it's not about the money, it's about the interest work. And we work a lot with Raspberry Pi, and we do that really pretty much at cost. And the ventilator work was the same. So it's not always about, you know, just making that profit. Obviously, you know, you need to pay the wages and you need to keep the lights on, but it's got to be, you know, it's got to be about more than that.
Yeah, it goes back to the whole kind of purpose thing. And if you're only ever working with people that share a similar set of values to you, then you're not wasting your time. I found with the job that I do, I speak to lots of people that just waste my time. So I've got to a point where I've got this kind of I don't want to say process nailed down, but I've got a really good idea of when someone's going to be wasting my time quite early on. And
so how do you know, Brad, if someone's going to waste?
Okay, so if I use, maybe I'll use obviously what we're chatting about, Mel. For example, I've had some people that have come back to me and they ask questions about just some of the questioning. So if someone instantly talks about money, then I've got massive red flags on that. If that's your gut first question come back. Some people just want to communicate via email. They don't even want to spend 10, 15 minutes and have a chat with me. So for me, that's a red flag. That shows there's a lack of commitment there. So it's just, you're basically just trying to like screen out lack of commitment, and then just invest all your time on the people that actually, you know, there's either an emotional attachment to it. So I want to get down to Bristol, or I know people there and they're really cool. So they're the people you invest your time in. But it's just the ones where you just kind of go, you just talk to them and you can just feel it in the tone of their voice that they're not interested in this. And you can, and after you've spoken to thousands of people, you kind of get a good tone for it early on. Just how someone answers an email, someone says call me at 1 o'clock and they're there at 1 o'clock and they're not at 10 past 1. It's just little things like that. And so you end up doing, I mean, I had a guy last week, and I have to edit this out because he may be listening, but he cancelled a third interview because he got an insect bite. I mean, come on. I mean, seriously, it's like, you know,
you texted me about that.
And he didn't get the job. Yeah, and I kind of almost went to the client. I was like, look, he's kind of mucking you about here. Like, I can arrange this if you want to, but if you want me just to pull it from him, then, you know, and you do that quite often. Sometimes you have to have quite robust discussions with people. About, like, you're literally taking the piss here. Like, and I think COVID's really elevated and accelerated that, of people just taking the mick. Like, just people that are kind of, they've just got these weird expectations of they're going to work from home one day here, they go into the office here, and it's just like, dude, like, this is the job, this is what they're paying, this is, you know, do you want it or not? It's like, come on.
Isn't it? Because you'd think if people didn't have a job at this time, they'd also be figuring out there's quite a few other people that don't have a job at this time. Or, you know, they need to, you know, really up their game.
Yeah, I think there's.
I'm grateful for that every moment of every day right now. You know, people talk about, oh, what's it like working from home? How do you get on with it? I'm like, mate, I've got a job. And there are a lot of very talented people out there who don't. And I would not like to be in that race, in that competition right now.
No, it's tough, and it's just because the industry and how it is, it's very weird, because I just think clients are equally as kind of culpable sometimes. I think expectation levels are just bizarre. Like, you know, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this, and it's like, they're not out there. You know, you've got
sometimes a job spec is written around someone that they've worked with before, perhaps, and they're trying to go, I want that person, I know they're not available, so I just want someone who can basically drop in and do that same.
Yeah, it's like we know everyone I've ever had on this podcast I've ever spoken to, they always say that design education is not fit for industry.
I can't even go there. I just can't even go there because I get so angry.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so like when are we going to get to a point where we're stop going to just saying that word and just start investing in people that are maybe not quite what you're looking for? And it's that's the thing that really bugs me. It's like, I need someone that's done agency, done 5 years here. It's like
we always talk about 25% experience, 25% qualifications, 50% attitude. And we've taken some of the most successful members of our team are ones who actually on paper you wouldn't even interview, because they just don't have the relevant experience. But it doesn't matter, because if they've got the right attitude, they can learn it. And they're going to be much more thankful and aware of the opportunity that they've been presented with than other individuals. So. And it's funny because sometimes you'll get a CV, and I'm sure you need to probably get off this subject before you lose all your clients. But I think sometimes you get a CV, and then you see the names of the agency consultants. You're like, wow, this person's going to be mind-blowingly good.
But they're not.
And you're just like, God, I've had more fun watching paint dry.
Yeah, you start over time. You start to learn which agencies are best for certain agencies. So I'll look at you guys and think, okay, some of the Cambridge mold probably might not be right, but then you look at some of the others and it's like culturally they're quite similar. Just the output of the work is quite similar. So yeah, even just saying I want someone that's done agency, you look at them and it's like, knowing how they work, they're probably still not right. So you've got this talent pool of a really small amount, and then because of the way that we're paid to basically find people the job. So when people don't fit the brief, it's like, I'm really sorry, but the client's dictated the brief and you're just not right. It's like, I can't, it's rock and a hard place really. I've got a talk coming up, Merle, with the Uni of Brighton. For some reason, they've got in touch with me and said, can you ramble at our students? I think they actually listen to this podcast. So as someone that's pretty influential within our little world, what would you advise the students of Brighton? And then I'll just kind of steal it. Because then I'll steal it and I'll just in front of them.
I was speaking. There used to be a conference called Product Design and Innovation. I don't think it runs anymore. I was speaking at that a few years ago, and there was some students who were speaking the next slot after me.
Okay.
And one of them stood up and said, well, I'm really angry with leaders of design businesses. So my ears perked up. I was like, all right, let's listen to this then. And they said, because, I send people my CV and I don't get a response. I don't get feedback. And so I was like, a red rag to the bull. I put my hand up and I said, look, you need to understand what we're talking about here. I probably get direct into my inbox addressed to me, so this isn't even if you're sending it to hello at Kinneir Dufort, in the region of probably at least 20-25 CVs a week.
Wow. So
that's 100 a month, that's 1,200 a year. If I sat there and said, oh well, I think you should do this, or maybe think about developing this part of your career, then I would get zero else done apart from answering graduate CVs. Yeah. So if you actually bothered to write to me, or because no one ever writes anymore, so send me, and I said, if you send me a pack of Haribo, I'll definitely read it. I did get a few packs of Haribo, which was a bonus. Yeah. Or actually, phone my team and get through to me, because if you're a bit clever, you will be able to get through to me. Or Craig, our chief design officer, somebody that could really, or actually just drop me a line and say, I'll buy you a coffee, or I'll take you out for a sandwich. I would absolutely do that, and I have done that a few times. But if you're one of those 1,200 people who's just sending me your blank CV, mainly with our company name spelt incorrectly,
IER, is it? Yeah.
It is difficult to spell. It took me a few years to get it right. But or quite often I'll get one sort of addressed to Dear DCA, or
oh nice.
It's kind of like, come on guys, you need to raise your game. Let's be a bit creative here. Let's think a bit out, a bit out of the box, a bit differently. So that would be my advice.
Yeah.
And your cover letter has to say something more specific than "I really admire your company's quality." You know, it has to, tailor it, write it each time, then delete the previous ones. But at P-Design Eye, you caught my interest there because I used to go to those, I think, most years that they ran. So chances are I was at the same one. And my question was more about COVID times aside, why don't we have something like that anymore, do you think?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's an interesting question. The conference that I always go to is it's called GIF London. It stands for the Global Innovation Forum, and we've been involved with it for about 5 years. And I often either small member of the team will speak or interview. This year it's online. It's in November, and actually the tickets are a lot more reasonable. I'm giving Max a massive plug now.
Yeah.
I think actually, I don't know if I think it's a lot cheaper, but they do a really good range of speakers. That's why I love it. And actually a lot of it is really left field as well. So we did a series of interviews over the summer, just to kind of, with Global Innovation Forum. And I interviewed a magician, which was a first. He was lovely. But they've had like crazy cooks talking about creativity, and they've got everyone there from sort of lots of different industries, and he's the chap Max who runs it is really creative in terms of the way he thinks about the sort of the speaker list. It's not because you do see the same people on a lot of these, and obviously, and I'm sure they've got a lot of interesting points to make. But often as well, the ticket prices are just insane. Maybe how many conferences are happening this year where they're charging the same amount of money?
I think they should be free. I think they should be free. I mean, we could put a charge on this, but it's like, what's the point? It's like, it should be free to hear the views of design partners who we had on, or why do we put things? I mean, dare I say, bidder. Everything's like, why is it all charged? Why is it not free for us all to learn from?
Behind a paywall, you're doing the work. You are the culture. Should be.
Definitely. And I think there is a massive issue in our industry. For example, so one of the things that we're involved heavily with, because we also have a series of partnerships, which is around everything from sort of STEM.
Yeah, and kerning the gap and all that kind of stuff.
Kerning the gap. So we run. It was originally it was set up in 2016. It was by Nat, a really good friend of mine, Nat Mayer, and she set it up in London. And then we sort of talked about we wanted to take it to the whole of the country because believe it or not everything happens in London. Hold the front page there. So we're now in Bristol, we're in Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Glasgow, and we're looking at Birmingham and Dublin as well. So we've got a much more national presence now, and we run, and it's sort of two parts to that. So part of it is around sort of events and workshops and speakers and just talking about everything that that needs addressing, such as confidence or kind of how to get ahead, all of these kind of issues around sort of women, because obviously our in the latest design report by the Design Council in 2018, in industrial design and engineering and consultancy, it's 5% women.
Christ, yeah.
I don't know if you knew that, but it's not great. There's a bit of work to do there.
Yeah.
So the other bit we do is mentoring, which is the point that I was going to make, because I think a lot of mentoring programs charge thousands and thousands of pounds. We do it for 20 quid, which covers the wine. Well, it doesn't actually often cover the wine, and I end up having to buy some of the wine as well. But it's got to be accessible, because how else? And all we say is we want someone to have done 2 years in industry. That's that's all, and then anyone's welcome beyond that. And also, it's not it's designers, it's account handlers, it's you could be doing anything. You could be working in finance in design. It's because a lot of there's a lot of exclusivity as well around oh, well, you're not, I've worked in design 22 years, but I'm not a qualified designer. So, does that make me kind of, a second-class citizen? Probably to some people.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
But, I have to put my way around a decent design and, know a bit of CAD when it's necessary. But the point being that it's got to be open to all. It's got to be, open to everybody.
Not just people that studied at Brunel or Loughborough. Dare I?
I mean, that's it. It can feel like your career is over.
Dare I say? Yeah.
You listen to this podcast, certainly in the first few episodes where we kept talking about that, it could feel like your design career is over by the time you're graduated, because you went to, I don't know, let's just say any of the others, because if I call one out by name, I'll feel a burden of guilt for a week. But I don't think that's the case. We've talked about getting out of the city, getting out into into the rest of the country, or getting on a plane and going overseas, and
then quarantining for 2 weeks, Stu.
And then quarantining for 2 weeks.
We need to get that in there.
Oh, do you know what? I keep forgetting about this. I keep going, I'm about ready to go to the Alps. Oh no, not allowed. No, can't.
I think there is a bit of elitism in our industry, which I think is misplaced, and mainly the dinosaurs who sort of kind of hanging on to it by thread. But we need to look at our industry and go, we've got issues around equality, we've got issues around diversity, we've got issues around geography, we've got issues around kind of from a social perspective in terms of who those kind of career paths are available to. There's a lot that needs addressing, and as an industry I don't think we're really doing that good a job of addressing it. And I think I'm also saying there's lots of people who will sit around and talk about it a lot, but there's not that many.
Who's actually doing anything about it? So that's the key, isn't it? We could all sit here and say, oh, there's a massive issue with diversity, but who are the set of people that can say, right, we need to do something about this?
This is it. I think it is everybody. It's what we say, you are the culture. So this is, again, one of the big reasons for setting up the podcast in the first place, was that those conversations that are happening, at coffee breaks and behind closed doors. Now I'm not saying this is the first time it's ever happened by any stretch, but it's happening more frequently as a result of things like this. And that if we can offer that kind of a platform, then great. I don't know how we fix it, but I know that by at least signposting it, somebody will know how to take the lead.
And I think these are all massive topics that need addressing, so it's not going to be an overnight fix. But there needs to be, you need to start walking the walk and not just talk the talk, and there are ways of addressing it, but it's a massive issue. I think even I'm talking about this, but I think in KD we're 35% women, so we're not at 50. I have one team that is all male, which I have to hang into electronics and software. So if you any good female electronics and software engineers give me drop me a line. But I do think it is massively challenging, because even if we say to the recruiters, right, we want 50-50 on the long list, can't find them.
It goes before it gets to our point. It's like it starts at an education level. It starts way before it gets to us. I'm conscious that you've got a client call in about 10 minutes time, so I'm just going to ask you one final question. So, design for a better world. What does the world look like in 5 years' time, Mel?
I think that's a really quite a big question to answer there, isn't it?
Well, I'm hoping that you'll have the answers, because no one else does, Mel. So,
well, hopefully, we'll have some people in charge who actually know what they're doing. So that would be a good start. The problem is all the really good people don't want to go into things like politics, because it's such a thankless task. I did read a story recently where about Greece, who have just appointed a chief creative officer. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
So I think it was ex-Google ex-Google chap they've employed. But I love that idea, you know, and I know a lot of the work that the DBA and various other bodies do is around trying to kind of, and obviously Design Council as well, trying to get design more on the agenda to have more of a say, because we know there is, you know, statistic evidence now which shows it's good for business, and businesses that focus on that are more profitable and successful and across a number of different KPIs. But I think, you know, it will be a different place. I mean, we're actually going to record a podcast this week on the future of work, because I think that's just such a fascinating area. I listened to one last night from The Economist, and basically they were just saying, and they were sort of talking about all these different pillars, and every single piece sort of information they said, well, it's inconclusive. They don't know. Nobody knows. This is the beauty of it. You know, people who claim to know are just telling porcupines. So I think if we can get more of a focus in terms of creative solution and get a seat at the table, you know, if we were all accountants, we'd have a seat at the table. So, you know, why, if money buys you a seat at the table, why can't creativity? The World Economic Forum, in their Jobs of the Future report, talk about the 3 most vital skills moving forward from 2020 will be critical thinking, complex problem solving, and creativity. And that's gone up from number 10 in 2015. So they're starting to recognise that we need to be a bit more creative in terms of how we approach these challenges, you know, and that's everything from, you know, environmental issues to equality, to diversity, to, you know, to the role that technology will play, because that's going to be huge as well.
Can I just chime in? Can I ask one last question as well, please? Because a friend of mine that is a former colleague, he's in that sort of 5 to 10 year period in his career. And he's facing that same question that a lot of us face is it better to be more generalist so that you've got more opportunities potentially available, or to specialize in one thing or one area, maybe not just one, but kind of focus more creative, more technical, more this or that? What are your thoughts there?
I would say focus every time. You know,
Really?
it's a depth of expertise. I think the way that certainly we're seeing from clients is they want experts. You know, they don't want generalists. So it's around, you know, it's that classic T shape, isn't it? Really, you know, you've got that specific depth in one area. Maybe try and choose something not too niche.
Yeah, what happens when your niche bottles out? That's the problem.
And then if you think about things, you know, we know what's on people's agendas. ESG, you know, that's going to be huge. It's not going away. The problems are getting worse, they're not getting better. So, you know, areas like that, and just have that depth of expertise, but that broader understanding of how that actually fits within the context of the other, you know, areas that surround that, or that are, you know, all those other facets that are needed as part of that development process. If you're an expert, you're a thought leader. If you're a thought leader, you have to communicate that content. In my view.
That's Mel's view.
Excellent.
Was that a classic case of I've got a friend, but it was actually referring to you?
No, I just didn't want to use his name because I didn't want to incriminate him. As I say, he's a former colleague, and if he's thinking about what to do with his next career move, then you know, it doesn't take. I don't have that many former colleagues. One of the things that I thought about that was it's great. As you say, it's great to have a technical expertise, but I do think as a designer, you know, you need a broader palette beyond just design as well. And that reading list, I know that Jordan publishes reading lists for designers, and I think they're fantastic. It goes beyond. You were talking about Simon Sinek earlier, and for me, I always include. Well, I won't go through the whole list because it gets embarrassing because it's a bit sort of troped out now. But I think as well as just the generalism of design, of industrial design, it goes beyond that as well, and around, again, I've talked about wanting to read about emotional intelligence and around psychology and around ethnography and all of these sort of things as well. I just wanted to, I know you've got to go, so I will just stop.
And you thought I was bad at the kind of closing things off. Cheers for coming on, Mars. It's really appreciated to have your time on was it Wednesday? Is it a Wednesday evening? Next up, we've got the guys over at Arrival coming on. So designing a better world, I'd imagine mobility and the way we interact with our vehicles is a big part of that. So we'll be hoping to get some answers from those guys about how we're going to come up with some pretty quirky solutions around the world of transport.